Hello, everyone. On this recording, again, we're talking about fiscal policy. I wanted to finish taxation here and talk a little bit about automatic stabilizers and different discretionary policies that the government can do to, again, as I've said before, just so you don't forget it, all these fiscal policies and monetary policies that we talked about before are for the purpose of closing gaps, closing either inflationary or recessionary gaps. So we talked about here the taxation and where it came from. And I hope you can see, unfortunately, I have a little bit of glare there. And I can't record in the library anymore. I was kicked out of recording in the library. So we have to do what we can. But I hope you can see this. In the biggest sources of income for the federal government, 50% comes from individuals in income tax returns. Okay? 32% comes from Social Security, and that, to clarify that, that essentially is refers to payroll taxes. Now, some Social Security benefits are taxable also, and that would be that would go into the income tax here too. So basically, this payroll tax, that's income tax. Corporate taxes have gone down from 1944 from 34% to 11%. So excise taxes, which favors, essentially it's an indirect tax, so it is taxed to companies, but of course they pass it on. Excise tax would affect wealthier people that can buy lots of things. Okay, so that's gone down from 46% in 1934 to 3% now. The income tax wasn't a whole lot in 1934, only 14%. And the payroll taxes was even lower because 25% of the whole population did not have a job back then. So anyway, so that's what we'd like to talk about that. There is sentiment that the tax hits the middle people more than anything, the middle income, because of the fact that wealthy people supposedly can hire tax experts and things to plan so that they don't have to pay their allotted shares, supposedly. Okay. Now, in terms of what they call automatic stabilizers. Okay. Now, first of all, automatic has the notion that you don't have to flip an on switch to have it go, have it start up. It automatically begins to impact things when certain economic parameters are reached. One of the things, the automatic stabilizers, is income tax rates. Now, in theory, the U.S. has what's called a progressive tax rate, which means when you have lower income, you're supposed to pay a smaller percentage of your income, and as your income goes up, the percentage of your tax goes up also. And that's supposed to work. And the way it works, why it's an automatic stabilizer, if you have a situation like this, where you have this is average price, or the price index, and this is real GDP, which we call Y. Y is a symbol for income. Real GDP is income. It's basically income to the people that made it. But anyway, Y. It doesn't stand for anything except income, and why it stands for income, who knows? Again, economists can't spell. So anyway, if we have a situation like this, where we have the long run average or aggregate supply, where the economy should be operating in terms of GDP, we have aggregate demand here, like this, and we have short run aggregate supply like that. Now again, the short run aggregate supply, where it intersects with the aggregate demand, is actually what's going on now. And so we have a gap here of what the GDP level is as to what it should be. And so this is a recessionary gap. Okay? Well, what happens? Well, if it's like this, income is down, payroll taxes are down, okay? And so what that is supposed to do is create more disposable income, and disposable income affects consumption. Price levels tend to impact, at least to a certain extent, investment, and we'll talk about the other stuff in a little bit. But this is an automatic stabilizer. It's supposed to stabilize the level of GDP out towards the optimum levels here, okay? So it's automatic. It's the tax rate, unless Congress changes the tax rate or something like that. It's automatic. And if it's in a situation where we have an inflationary gap, well, then the tax is supposed to go up. And so that lowers disposable income, which will tend to shift aggregate demand. It may be out here somewhere, and it tends to shift it back. So that's one of the things. That's one of the automatic stabilizers, is the income tax rate. And the corporate rate also. Supposedly, if the economy's in a downturn, excuse me, if the economy's in a downturn, businesses are earning less profits, they would pay less income tax, and that would, from consumption, investment, other things, generally consumption and investment, that would tend to increase aggregate demand. So that's one thing, taxation. The other thing that tends to be an automatic stabilizer are certain transfer payments, like unemployment insurance, also welfare, and that sort of thing, okay? And the idea for that, again, is the same thing, is that when somebody loses income, when their income goes way down, well, unemployment insurance kicks in, so that would make their income not go down as far as it would without it. And same with welfare. If somebody can't work or isn't working and they qualify under certain conditions, that would tend to raise their disposable income, and that's income after taxes, disposable income, more than it would be without it. And so that would make, if aggregate demand is dropping, that would kind of slow down the drop of it, basically. Okay? So those are the two main automatic stabilizers. Okay? Now, the other thing besides automatic stabilizers that we have in terms of fiscal policies, and automatic stabilizers generally work without too much problem, okay? But discretionary policies are another deal here. Discretionary. Now, discretionary fiscal policies, running into the other thing there. Discretionary fiscal policies are policies that don't automatically turn on, that the government has to conceive of them and then implement them, okay? Now, what are some discretionary policies? Okay. Well, one thing can be the government purchases, or government spending in general. Well, actually, government spending is government purchases plus transfer payments, basically. And government can increase, remember how the GDP equals consumption plus investment plus government purchases plus net exports, okay? Well, the G category of that can increase spending. The government can increase transfer payments. It can increase government spending by things like infrastructure improvement, road projects, things like that, public works. And what that does is that will tend to increase aggregate demand, because that will increase government purchases, will produce more money, increasing consumption, and it will move the aggregate demand curve out in many respects. Now, another discretionary policy is to either increase tax rates or decrease tax rates. Again, increasing tax rates would tend to be done when you have an inflationary sort of situation here to move back aggregate demand. Lowering tax rates would be when you have a recessionary thing to stimulate the economy. Okay. Now, there's some problems with discretionary policies. Okay. There are lags, and the lags are caused by, for one thing, economics is weird. People have different opinions about what's going on. And besides having different opinions about what's going on, they have different opinions how to deal with it. Okay? So there is a lag in discerning what's going on. There is a big lag in formulating responses. There is even a bigger lag because many parts of the government are in a rivalry with each other, and they don't like to see things that the other side, they don't like to see the other side succeed. So it's a big pain in the rear end. So there's a lag in agreeing on a policy, there's a lag in implementing the policy, and there is a lag in the policy affecting the whole mess. Okay? And oftentimes we have, again, a fiscal policy that's put into effect that doesn't work because the problem doesn't exist. Or it did exist and it kind of corrected itself. There's a couple other things that impact how fiscal policies work, and we'll talk about that in the next recording. Thank you.